All right. So starting the recording again. This is the beginning of section 4 of the um, Angular website tutorial, which is the Tour of Heroes app. We're at section 4, adding a service or services to our application. So we just got done creating a feature component, and now we're going to add a really cool part of Angular called a service. And services can do all sorts of things. They can pass data around. They can um, inject data or code in various places throughout an app. So the Tour of Heroes hero component is currently getting and displaying fake data. Now, does anybody know what that might mean? What they mean by fake data? So you have to ask yourself, what data is being displayed and where is it coming from? Anybody know? Anybody want to answer? Anybody know where the data is being displayed from in the hero component in this ng4 loop?
Say the question again. Sorry.
What do they mean by fake data? The Tour of Heroes hero component is currently getting and displaying fake data. What data is that? Where is it in the app? What do they mean by fake data? Omar said mock heroes. Yes, so we have this file, this TypeScript file, which is being exported. We're exporting this constant, which is an array of hero objects. Okay, so we're getting that from mockheroes.ts.
Oh, I see. Like, so like their test data then, right? Basically.
And in the heroes component, we are creating a property and setting it equal to that, I believe, right? That's what we're currently doing. So this is potentially problematic. So after the refactoring in this tutorial, Heroes component will be lean and focused on supporting the view. It will also be easier to unit test with a mock service. For the sample application that this page describes, see the live example or download the example. So why services? Components shouldn't fetch or save data directly. And they certainly shouldn't knowingly present fake data. They should focus on presenting data and delegate data access to a service. So you just want your components to present data. And part of this is because you want your components to be modular. And if you are creating data or saving or fetching data with a component and you make a whole bunch of instances of that component, then all of that data, all that potentially fake data, will be created or fetched multiple times, and you could get some problems with displaying stuff in your app. So we want to delegate this to a service, and a service within the context of Angular is like, it's just a TypeScript file that's being injected into the app with dependency injection. So we will create a hero service that all application classes can use to get heroes. Instead of creating the service with the new keyword, we will rely on dependency injection to inject it into the heroes component constructor. So we're not going to be using the new keyword to create an instance of the class. We're going to be injecting an instance, a shared instance of this service class into all parts of the app. Where it's injected, it's going to be the same instance, and we're going to inject it into the heroes component constructor method. Services are a great way to share information among classes that don't know each other. So basically, there's no sort of parent-child relationship or awareness of the components between each other. So you'll create a message service and inject it in 2 places. So, okay. So we will inject in hero service, which uses the service to send a message, and we will inject in messages component, which displays that message and also displays the ID when the user clicks the hero. So we are going to create 2 services. We're going to create one service called hero service, and we're going to create another service called message service, which will be able to inject itself both in hero service and in a messages component. So yes, you can inject services inside services. Very useful. So we're going to have to create 2 services and a new component for this section. All right, so the first step, we're going to be working on the hero service, and we can create the hero service by using the Angular CLI to create a service called hero. We use the nggs, S for service, hero command. So if we do that, let's make sure I don't have this already. Pretty sure I don't. So if you're hosting your app and you want to use the Angular CLI, you just open up a new terminal. Make sure you are inside of your application. Use the nggs hero command. Hit enter. This might take a while on my computer to work. I hope it doesn't take too long. That would be annoying. So if you're done with that, you should see this as the auto-generated text in your hero.service.ts file. This should be in your app folder. Okay, mine finally generated. So you can see my hero.service.ts. This is the boilerplate auto-generated code. You can see that they are importing the injectable decorator from Angular core, and the injectable decorator takes as an argument an object, and one of those key value pairs, one of those property value pairs is the provided in. And so this setting basically is saying that you have a shared single instance of this service that can be injected. The same instance is going to be injected even if you're injecting it in multiple places. Notice that the new service imports the Angular injectable symbol and annotates the class with the injectable decorator. This marks the class as one that participates in the dependency injection system. The hero service class is going to provide an injectable service, and it can also have its own injected dependencies. It doesn't have any dependencies yet, but it will soon. That's the other service we're going to make. The injectable decorator accepts a metadata object for the service the same way that the component decorator did for your component classes. Get hero data. The hero service could get hero data from anywhere, a web service, local storage, or a mock data source. Removing data access from components means you can change your mind about the implementation anytime without touching any components. They don't know how the service works and they don't care, right? So this is another really good aspect to Angular. You create services to handle data access. Then you don't have to change multiple things. You can just change the service if you need to change how you're getting the data or where you're getting the data from, or even what the service does, right? So, local storage is on your computer, a web service. I'm guessing they just mean like some other sort of code. You can get it from an API. Okay, so removing data. Yep. So the implementation in this tutorial will continue to deliver mock heroes. So our mock heroes file is still going to be relevant. So we need to make sure that we, in our hero service.ts, import the hero interface from hero and import the heroes constant from mock heroes, which is our array of heroes. And we are going to put those imports at the top. And then add a getHeroes method to return the mock heroes. So we're going to add a method inside of our service. We put that below the constructor. And so this is a getHeroes method of type here. It's going to return hero array, an array of heroes, which is the interface for a JavaScript object. And so return heroes, it's returning this data. Cool. So this service is just being injected. Well, we have to inject it now, is the next step. All right, so did everybody finish these steps? Has everybody created the hero service? Done?
Hey, Mark, question.
Yep.
When you cut and paste your code in there, sometimes one line's faded out. That means that it's not being used, or it's not being used, right? Is that what it means? So meaning like something in that line. Okay,
Yep.
got it. Okay. Making
So
sure.
if you comment out this method, you'll see that this fades out. You comment it in, you'll see it brightens up, and that's because it's being used by this method. Both of these imports are being used by this method. If you have unused imports, they're going to fade out. That's a feature of VS Code. It's pretty cool. Anybody else? Are we waiting on anybody else to finish this up, to finish up making their service? Everybody following along okay with what's going on? So it's good to be building an understanding of what's going on and understand, like what things are, right? And things are multiple things, right? So like files within an Angular context, they boil down to just TypeScript files and HTML and CSS. But then within the context of Angular, these decorators give them additional features and functions, and all the code for the all the code which makes these things do all their magic for us is from the Angular core files, and it's probably a good amount of code for creating all these features, for like components and directives and services and everything. So when we're initially learning how to use Angular, we don't really need to learn super duper in depth how exactly everything's working behind the scenes, because that would make us like developers of Angular framework, not just developers using Angular framework. So we don't really need to know that now, but who knows, maybe in the future you'll be curious about it. So we just have to understand the key point that we need to know for Angular is just how things fit together, We need to understand the basics of JavaScript and classes. We need to understand how the data is flowing, and we need to understand what these decorators do and what the role of all the pieces of Angular are, so that we use them correctly. All right, so next step, provide the hero service. You must make the hero service available to the dependency injection system before Angular can inject it into the heroes component by registering a provider. A provider is something that can create or deliver a service. In this case, it instantiates the hero service class to provide the service. To make sure that the hero service can provide this service, register it with the injector, which is the object that is responsible for choosing and injecting the provider where the application requires it. We're registering this service with the injector. Okay. By default, the Angular CLI command registers a provider with the root injector for your service by including provider metadata that is provided in :root in the injectable decorator. When you provide the service at the root level, Angular creates a single shared instance of hero service and injects into any class that asks for it. Registering the provider in the injectable metadata also allows Angular to optimize an application by removing the service if it turns out not to be used after all. So you can put different settings here for the provided in setting. If you put something other than root, it's going to have, I think, different instances of the service depending on where you're injecting it, or it might not even exist at all outside of certain components or services. All right, the hero service is now ready to plug into the heroes component. And they're saying this is an interim code sample that will differ from the final code review file. So this section was just talking about this code right here, this provided in root setting on the injectable decorator. Next, we need to update the heroes component. So in the heroes component, we need to delete these imports. And or do we need to delete those? Yeah, I think we delete those. And then we need to import the hero service. And then we have to replace the definition of our property, our heroes property, because we're no longer going to be directly pulling the data from our TypeScript file. We're going to change it to heroes is equal to an empty array of hero objects. Then they want us to inject the hero service in the constructor. So we're going to say private hero service of type hero service and inject this. So this is creating a private property which is being set to this shared hero service instance. So this shared instance is usable throughout the whole app. The parameter simultaneously defines a private hero service property and identifies it as a hero service injection site. When Angular creates a heroes component, the dependency injection system sets the hero service parameter to the singleton instance of hero service, the single shared instance of our hero service class. Okay? Are there any questions about this? Is anyone confused about what's going on or what Angular's doing here? Questions or comments? I think we need to keep the hero interface import. Okay. So then we're adding a getHeroes method. And the getHeroes method sets this heroes property to the hero service.getHeroes data return. As you know, in the hero service, we also have another method called getHeroes, which will get us our data. So we put this down here. So don't get confused. Now there's two methods called getHeroes. One is in our heroes service and one is in our heroes component. And then we are going to call our method in our ng-on-init lifecycle hook. So while you could call getHeroes in the constructor, that is not the best practice. Reserve the constructor for minimal initialization, such as wiring constructor parameters to properties. The constructor shouldn't do anything. It certainly shouldn't call a function that makes HTTP requests to a remote server as a real data service would. So we don't want the constructor to do anything. We just want them to wire parameters to properties. Okay. So instead, we're going to call getHeroes inside the ng-on-init lifecycle hook. This is part of Angular's lifecycle hook system. And let Angular call ng-on-init at an appropriate time after constructing a heroes component instance. So this ng-on-init is called after the constructor function. So the constructor function is called at the beginning as it's making an instance of this heroes component. So we don't want this to do too much. We can see it's creating a property and setting it equal to the hero service instance, and that's injecting the service to this component. But other than that, this constructor is not really doing anything. Yeah. Okay, cool. And then this should run. After the browser refreshes, the application should run as before, showing a list of heroes and hero detail view when you click on a hero name. So let's go ahead and verify that it does run. And when we click, we do. So we see the data we're supposed to see, and we can change it, and everything works nicely. Cool. Any questions about this? Did everybody finish? When you're finished with stuff through this add get heroes method, when you're finished with all that, ready to move on to the next step, type done in the chat. Okay, so the next step, well, they're actually talking to us about some observables. Okay, so the hero service.getHeroes method has a synchronous signature, which implies that the hero service can fetch heroes synchronously. The heroes component consumes the getHeroes method result as if heroes could be fetched synchronously. This will not work in a real app. You're getting away with it now because the service currently returns mock heroes. So I guess, do they want us to put... No, they're referring to this line of code here. This dot heroes equals this dot hero service dot get heroes. This will not work in a real app. You're getting away with it now because the service currently returns mock heroes, which is this TypeScript file with an array in it. But soon the application will fetch heroes from a remote server, which is an inherently asynchronous operation. So asynchronous functions in JavaScript they have to run after all synchronous functions. So Node.js functions are inherently asynchronous. So you can see the potential problem that if you assume that this code can run synchronously, but it's not going to run until the end of all other synchronous code, then you're going to get an error because this won't give you your data until after it's already run. The hero service must wait for the server to respond. Get heroes cannot return immediately with hero data, and the browser will not block will not block while the service waits. Yeah. Okay. Will not block while the service waits. I'm not really sure what that means, but I think it's what I kind of just said. Hero service.getHeroes must have an asynchronous signature of some kind. In this tutorial, hero service.getHeroes will return an observable because it will eventually use the Angular HTTP client.get method to fetch the heroes, and HTTP client.get returns an observable. Okay, so we need to make hero service.getHeroes return an observable. Okay, hero service. That is the private property. Okay, so hero service.getHeroes. When this service runs its getHeroes method, we need that to return an observable. So what is an observable? An observable is one of the key classes in the RxJS library. So you can read more about observables there. In a later tutorial on HTTP, you'll learn that Angular's HTTP client methods return RxJS observables. In this tutorial, you'll simulate getting data from the server with the RxJS of function. So open the hero service file and import the observable and of symbols from RxJS. So we import this inside of our hero service here. Replace the getHeroes method with this other code. So we got getHeroes of type observable class or interface hero array. Okay, so observable probably can have like it's just a thing itself, and then it has like a return types of the data of the observable. So this is just for structuring our data so we know like what kind of data it is. So you can see how this is pretty useful. We know this is going to be the hero type, the hero interface. Sorry, it's probably called the hero type, and the interface is the definition of the type, the custom type. So this hero type that we wrote here, which has an ID and a name, and the ID is going to be a number, and the name is going to be a string. Okay, so that's pretty cool. So this method is returning this data stuff. It's returning an observable of type hero, and then const heroes of heroes return heroes. Okay, so the of function is being used here, and so const heroes is equal to of heroes. What is of doing? Of heroes returns an observable hero array, and that emits a single value, the array of mock heroes. Okay, so the of heroes is returning this observable and emitting it, setting this const equal to it, and then we are returning that data. Okay, in the HTTP tutorial, you'll call HTTP client.get hero array, which also returns an observable hero array that emits a single value, an array of heroes from the body of the HTTP response. Okay, well, cool. So we make sure we change the get heroes code in our service, in our hero service. Okay, and now things are red. Ah, yes, because that's not going to work anymore. So we'll probably have to change that next. Okay. So next we have to subscribe in heroes components. Ah, yes, observables have to be subscribed to. Subscribe is a pretty useful method. All right, the hero service.getHeroes method used to return a hero array. Now it returns an observable of type hero array. You'll have to adjust to that difference in the heroes component. So you can see this is now red underlined because it's no longer working. Find the get heroes method and replace it with the following code, shown side by side with the previous version for comparison. Here's the original and here's the observable version. Okay, so we're gonna look at the observable version of this code. We have get heroes void this hero service dot get heroes dot subscribe heroes arrow function this dot heroes equals heroes. Okay, this dot hero service dot get heroes. Okay, hero service dot get heroes is referring to this service that was injected. Okay, dot subscribe heroes is equal to function. So this is the argument. This dot heroes equals heroes. So we're subscribing to heroes. Wait. Oh. We're subscribing to this observable this dot heroes equals heroes. Okay, this is a little confusing to me. I think partially because everything is being called heroes, and that's kind of breaking my brain a little bit. So observable dot subscribe is the critical difference. The previous version assigns an array of the heroes. We have to change this first before we move on. Previous version assigns an array of heroes to the component's heroes property. Right. The assignment occurs synchronously as if the server could return heroes instantly or the browser could freeze the UI while it waited for the server's response. That won't work when the hero service is actually making requests of a remote server. The new version waits for the observable to emit the array of heroes, which could happen now or several minutes from now. The subscribe method passes the emitted array back to the callback, which sets the component's heroes property. This asynchronous approach will work when the hero service requests heroes from the server. Okay. Yeah, I don't exactly understand what all exact properties we are. I think this dot heroes is referring to, because this is the heroes component. So inside heroes component, this is referring to the heroes component instance. And so this dot heroes would be the heroes property in heroes component, and heroes, we're subscribing to this observable and getting some heroes data. That is actually the return, this return data right here. Okay, and it's a little confusing because they're both called heroes, which I personally think shouldn't be the case, but you know, we can tell this is the heroes component heroes property because of the this keyword. I believe that's the case. I hope I'm not wrong about that, but I believe that is the case. So let's see, heroes component. So yeah, let's right click on this. Property heroes component dot heroes. Yes, okay, so I'm correct. This is the heroes component dot heroes property. So that is, this does refer to heroes component instance. So that's this property right here, which is part of this heroes component. Okay, cool. Good to know that I know what I'm talking about. All right. So yeah, it's always good to check what stuff is. You can like mouse over it in VS Code. It's going to tell you where it's coming from. This is a parameter of type this is a parameter heroes and it's gonna be of type hero array. Interesting. Okay. So this is a parameter. Could this be anything? Is this gonna work? Let's see if this still works. It looks like it works. Okay, cool. So this doesn't actually have to be called heroes because it's just a parameter to this arrow function. But it needs to be the same. Okay. All right, did everybody finish that step? Type done when you are done. And I think we just have, oh boy. I'm going to keep going. If you guys need to leave early, you're welcome to leave early, but I'm going to try to finish up this section for section 4. The rest of you can do this for homework if you want. Any questions before we move on? Have a good night, Frankie. I'm going to actually take a little break, and then I'm going to finish this up. You guys are welcome to head out, but if you want to stay, you're welcome to do so as well. I'll be posting a recording of all this stuff, the whole thing on our Google Classroom. But, you know, this tutorial is here, and you can follow it along as needed, so feel free to do so.